All right, thank you everybody for sticking around with us. I have a great guest to bring on. I'm very excited. I mean, let me show, you know what? Let this video explain a little itself.
Responsibility for change on the criminal justice system, on adults, and on our communities where it belongs, not on the children themselves.
Yes. Yes. That's right.
Let's create a new vision for a justice system, one that protects kids, holds perpetrators accountable, and one that offers a safe and clear justice process for survivors. Second, let's recognize that those who have been most historically oppressed in our society, especially those experiencing racism, sexism, classism, ableism, xenophobia, and homophobia, they need to be front and center in our movement. Front and center.
Yes.
And third, move sexual abuse prevention forward by educating yourself and the people around you about the signs that someone is at risk for abusing a child or is showing the signs of grooming. And intervene when you get that gut feeling something is not right. We can do all of these things. They are not impossible. They take courage. They take a sense of responsibility. But it is possible. I mean, imagine what the world would be like if we prevented any more children from being abused. Imagine what that would be like. Imagine how many more people would be kept safe if perpetrators like Epstein would have been caught the first time when they first showed symptoms of grooming or held accountable after the first offense, not the 1,000th offense that we just heard about, the first offense. Children deserve to have dreams, to laugh, to plan their futures, to be themselves without the lasting effects of trauma due to sexual violence. Let's give them the lives that they deserve. So finally, to all of the survivors here today, and to those watching this broadcast from home, my final message to you is this: let no one keep you from the healing and the joy that is your right. Let no one keep you from achieving your dreams and plans, because you are courageous. You may not feel courageous, but as Nelson Mandela said, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. So let us triumph. Remember, survivors, you are strong, you are loved, and you matter. I stand beside you, I stand with you. Together, we are unstoppable.
So that is my guest, Suzanne Isaza. She's the founder of incestaware.org, Sexual Assault Advocacy Network, community.org, or SAN, SAAN.org. And let me bring her in with us right now.
Hi there, John.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to.
That was a great speech. Where were you doing that at?
So that was at Thomas Paine Park on December 4th of last year in New York City. Nick Bryant, who's a journalist, organized a protest that coincided with the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, who was one of the chief enablers of Jeffrey Epstein, the sex trafficker. Right. And Incest Aware gathered a contingent. We had people from around the country come and talk to survivors, support survivors, and call for justice for the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, that was a very strong, very, very strong speech. I mean, it was very inspirational for, I know some of the survivors that here with our show that we have with us, my wife included. You know, it was an incredible speech because not many people talk like that, because it's such this issue is still so quiet and needs more awareness. And that speech was outstanding. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You know, it was a very emotional moment for me to be able to gather with other survivors. I'm a father-daughter incest abuse survivor, and it took me a long time to find my voice and to hold him accountable for what he did. But now, you know, decades later, to be around other people and to feel that energy and support of people who are not going to be quiet anymore. Because for so long, our abusers tell us, you must be quiet. You can't tell anyone. If you tell anyone, something bad's going to happen to you. And to overcome that fear and to speak up and to give voice to our experience is it's such an emotional place to be in. And so that was one of the best experiences I've had in my advocacy work over the last 8 years.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I learned that by accident. It's funny because doing this show, the show I do is like a political show. It usually is. It's all kind of based more local here. I'm in Niagara Falls, New York. And but it just happened. And next thing I knew, once one person came on the show and said their story, all of a sudden 5, 6, 7, 8, we're up to 10, man, maybe even 12 survivors that came forward and wanted to tell their story. So it's unbelievable. I thank you so much. Now, the two .orgs you have, one is incestaware.org and sexual assault advocacy network.org, or community.org, or SAAN. What, when, how, when did that all start?
Wow. So for the last 8 years, I've been doing advocacy work. I started out telling my story with this little speakers bureau in my neck of the woods, which is Rhode Island. And I told my story so many times, and I began to realize that we really needed to do this on a bigger scale. But that was before Me Too. That was before, people were offering opportunities and a platform for survivors to speak. I mean, it's so different now than it was 8 years ago when I got started. Yeah. But then after Me Too hit, I noticed, in social media, there were so many people like me coming forward and getting involved in this type of work, but really doing it in isolation. And for any survivor who has told their story, you probably have heard this with your guests, that it is hard. You need a lot of support. You need a lot of encouragement. And I found in my own work, I didn't have that because I didn't have a community. I was doing all of this work mostly myself. So I created the Sexual Assault Advocacy Network just as a Facebook group. And really, honestly, John, I was hoping for 50 people just to be able to chit chat with. And it grew. It's now up to about 1,600 members. And after, 6 months of being online, there were so many people coming forward saying, we need to do more. And so I brought a team together and we created an organization and we called it SAN. And it's still, operating today. This was 3 years ago that I started it. And then a year and a half ago, I really started to feel that I wanted to do more incest abuse specific work. Because despite Me Too, very few people are talking about incest abuse. It's one of the areas of sexual assault that's sort of still pushed under the rug. It's not enough is coming to light. And so I decided I would create a web resource because there was nothing on the web. I mean, if you go and you try to Google incest, see what you come up with. You don't want to do it.
You don't want to do it.
I created incestaware.org. It was a resource site. And the same thing happened with IncestAware as with SAN. Once it went live, people came out of the woodwork and said, oh my God, I have been waiting for this. What can I do to help? And so we started an organization and do all sorts of things, interviewing survivors and advocates, providing resources to survivors and their families and friends. I mean, just really creating a greater level of awareness of incest abuse, who's affected, what we need to do to stop it.
Yeah, it's you're so right. I mean, it's the one that is the most, from my experience with a couple people that I have come in contact with, that was their abuse. You're so right. It's the quietest of them all. I mean, that one is the toughest. I thank you for everything you're doing, because I know watching so many survivors come forward, and it's like that they go from being a victim to becoming a survivor, I guess, and then some of them get so in, they become almost like a warrior. Like they just go forward, and that's awesome because I see it, and it's really, for me, it just I don't know, it blows me away, because my worst day is nothing compared to some of the survivors I've talked to. I watch the nightmares, I've seen all the things, the PTSDs. So takes a lot of strength for what you do, and I thank you. The next question I got to ask you is, and this is what we've come across here, and I couldn't wait to ask you about this. A lot of our victims come forward, they become survivors, they tell their story. Then the victim shaming starts. We've had a lot of that, unfortunately. People continually, whether it's on social media, in one instance here in our local area, it was even in the newspaper, where they were asking, why did it take so long for you to come forward? Can you explain to the people out there that might not know why it takes so long?
You know, there are so many myths that surround incest abuse and sexual assault in general. And one of the tactics that's been used to keep survivors quiet is to blame them for the abuse. And that starts with the perpetrator. You know, most people are abused by someone that they know. And very often, especially for children who are sexually assaulted, there's a period of grooming where a perpetrator zones in on a particular child and sees vulnerabilities and sets up this relationship with the child and uses all of these tactics to gain their trust and get them to hold secrets. And eventually the abuse plays out. And so through that process of grooming, as a survivor, you begin to believe that it's your fault. You begin to believe that you did something to bring this on. And so what happens is that sense of the survivor, the victim being responsible, that permeates our entire society. And, you know, whenever you see somebody come forward, you know, a star or someone famous and talk about their experience of sexual assault, what is the first thing that people do? Many people do what I call rally around the perpetrator. Yeah. And they support the perpetrator, and they go on the public attack against the survivor. And then the spotlight shifts, you know, away from the perpetrator, the person who actually we should be focusing on, who should be held accountable. And the spotlight shifts over to the victim. What did they do? Why didn't they report? And so all these questions come up, and it's a tactic to deflect responsibility. And because so many survivors, you know, we've been hearing that for so long, we can very easily fall prey to falling into that sense of, I did something wrong. And so when I do my work and I speak to survivors, I always say, you did nothing wrong. We should be focusing on the person that did this to you, not what you should have done, what you could have done, what you might have done. And for many survivors, that's a revelation. That's really the first time that anyone's ever said that to them, because so many people in their lives have shamed them and blamed them. So it's a cultural practice, and it's one that Me Too has really tried to attack as a movement. And we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, the Me Too movement was the most, I mean, maybe my lifetime. I can't think of a better, bigger movement that caused such an here in New York State, they had the Child Victims Act. That was great. And so many people came forward from things that happened to them from the 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever it was. School districts, heck, the one that I'm in right now, there's over 40. And that I don't even think that's close to how many really. So the Me Too movement was the most, the biggest thing that I've seen in my lifetime. I got to ask you a question. Is there any way for parents or anybody to recognize signs of a predator that you know of?
That is the best question, John. I'm so glad you asked that. Very few people ask that. We don't often focus on prevention. We often focus our efforts in the community on helping people after the fact, which is important. But I am all about prevention and awareness and educating people about what to look for, how to spot the signs that someone is at risk of abusing a child. And there are absolutely questions that we can be asking and things to be looking for. And I have a great friend, Feather Berkower from Parenting Safe Children, who's done like many, many trainings on child abuse prevention. And the one thing that really stuck right when I met her that she said to me is, the people that you need to know the best are the people who know your child the best, right? So anyone that your child is spending a lot of time with, you've got to know those people. And for me, and I'm a parent of a teenager, and you know, I am guilty of the same thing that so many other parents are guilty of, which is, you know, your kid wants to go over somebody's, you know, their friend's house, and off they go, and you're not even really sure what's going on in that house or who the parents are, or if someone's home, whatever. But one of the first things that parents should do is get to know the people that their children are spending time with. What we will often find with predators is they will groom kids. So there's a period of time before active abuse often starts. So there's a great moment of opportunity there to spot those signs. And some of the signs are that an adult or an older child will be trying to isolate a kid, will be trying to spend, a lot of time with a child, testing them, testing their boundaries, trying to get them to keep secrets, seeing if they will keep secrets, buying them lots of, gifts, taking them special places, always trying to be with them privately. And so these are many signs that in the community we can pick up on, but, we don't always recognize them. So part of the education process is to let people know this is what you look for. That's the first thing. And the second thing is if you see it, act. And that is as simple as asking questions. Why is this happening? Right? Actually talking to the person at risk and letting them know that you are sensing that there is unacceptable behavior and that there need to be some boundaries that are set, some body rules that have to be set with your child. And perpetrators will focus on children who do not have that presence in their life. They will focus on vulnerable kids that are perhaps in foster care or running away from home or just isolated. They find those kids, and those are the kids they target because they know they have the best chance of getting away with abusing that child, right? So knowing the adults and the older kids around your kid, and I should mention before I stop here that one of the biggest misunderstandings is that a vast proportion of child abuse happens at the hands of an older child, an older youth. In fact, some studies suggest that sibling incest abuse is 5 times as common as parent-child incest abuse. 5 times as common, where an older sibling will molest a younger sibling. And so just being aware of these factoids, right, is really important because it raises our awareness of who we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, it's funny because I think back, like, I'm gonna have to date myself. I graduated from high school in 1989. So I think back in the 80s and all the teachers that I can think of, that it was almost known what they were doing. Like it was bizarre. They could be with a 13-year-old somewhere, and it would just be, I just think back to those days, and I tell you, what makes me really sad and upset is there has to be millions of people out there that haven't been able to speak yet. Because if things are still going on today, Suzanne, I can't even imagine what went on in the 80s, 90s. You know what I mean? It's beyond an epidemic.
Yes, it is. And I can tell you, I'm just a couple of years younger than you, John, not too far behind you, but in the 80s is when, the late 70s and 80s is when my abuse happened. I'm a father-daughter incest abuse survivor, and I was abused by my father from probably the time that I was an infant up until about age 9 or 10. And there were so many signs that there was something wrong at home. Now that I'm an adult, now that I understand this issue, I look back and I see so many missed opportunities. Friends who could have done something, family, teachers, people in the church. There were so many signs that my father was doing something wrong at home and that I was suffering for it. And I had so many signs of a child who was, signs that a child is being abused, such as, being depressed, being anxious, having, an eating disorder, drug and alcohol use, promiscuity, self-harming behaviors, silence, all sorts of things that kids will do in response to abuse. But again, if people are not looking for that, they will not recognize that that kid could be actively being abused. Sometimes what happens is the kid gets labeled, that's a problem child. That kid, needs some good discipline, so the diagnosis is completely off. And no one in my life until I was 19 and I reported my father, no one in my life asked me ever if something was happening at home. none of my family, extended family, nobody at school, none of my friends. No one asked. And if somebody had asked, perhaps things would have turned out differently for me. And so I always, tell people, just ask. With any child in your life, you sense something is awry with them. You don't need to, prod in, get inside their, their business. You can simply tell them, I'm a safe adult. I'm here for you. You can tell me anything. I will never judge you. I will listen and I will do whatever I can to help you, just so you know that I am there for you. And sometimes that makes the difference. Most kids, won't spill their beans right at that moment, but they will know you are somebody that they can turn to.
Yeah, I got to ask you something. It's kind of a hypothetical. And this is because the judicial system, the whole system, I feel, is set up for the perpetrator or for the predator. I don't know if it's because the predators made the system. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be really geared towards protecting predators, along with statutes of limitations and all that. If I were, or someone were to get, let's say you get an email, let's say you get a letter, you get a text from somebody that is saying, this person, be careful with this adult over here. They've hurt someone in the past, a child, they've done something. What do you do there? I'm just curious, what would you do in that situation? Can you go forward to anyone? Would the authorities even care? I'm just curious, what would you do there?
Well, every situation is different. But the three things that I would tell people is, first of all, recognize that there could be a problem. And that is probably the biggest impediment, is that so many people don't realize that there could even potentially be something happening. So if you don't realize that potentially something's happening, it's all going to fly right over you. So the first thing is recognize we could have a problem here that we need to intervene in. The second thing is educate yourself and feel prepared about how to play a role in that intervention. And so many of us believe that what happens at home stays at home. It's somebody else's house. It's somebody else's kid. It's not my business, right? And that keeps many of us from doing anything. And I think the fear, and I legitimize this for people, it is very uncomfortable dealing with this type of issue. Most people would probably tell you, I would have no idea how to handle this situation. There's a lot of fear and there's a lot of hesitancy, and then time goes by and nothing is done because we're uncomfortable about it. So get educated about the issue of child sexual abuse and what the resources are out there. There is a great website called stopitnow.org, and it is all about helping people understand sexual abuse and understand what they can do to help kids and to intervene. So there's a lot out there. Getting educated and resourced is an excellent thing. And then the third thing is to plan a course of action. Now, every situation is different, but having some way of acting is important, because if there's no plan, then probably nothing will happen. And there are child protective services. There are anonymous ways to report. There are lots of resources out there that somebody can access to say, hey, I'm worried about this person. What can I do? What should I do? How could I help this child? And get the advice of experts to help you. You don't need to be a lone ranger heading out there, running into a situation, feeling unprepared and feeling like it's all on your shoulders. There's a big structure around us that help us to protect kids from being harmed. So realize there might be a problem, get educated about what's out there, and then plan a course of action.
Thank you. The other thing that we got to try to figure out, and I'm sure you're already, I'm just jumping in. We got to change laws, or we got to do something, because statute of limitations are really, I've never seen, and I keep seeing it. These men, women, whatever, these predators, they abuse in the 70s, they abuse in the 80s, they may abuse in the 90s, whatever it is. Now they've run out the clock and they're free. So maybe then, because I remember here in New York State, we had the Child Victims Act. A lot of people came forward and their only recourse was going to civil court. When they get into civil court, the person will admit it, that they did it. And at that point, they're still free to go. You know what I mean? They're still free to go, and they're not on a registry. is there something, I don't know, these things got to change, because there are so many people walking around out there right now that I can think of that are like that have gone to civil court, have admitted to having, molested, raped a child, and at this point, it just doesn't matter. It's like it didn't happen.
It's a travesty. It is truly a travesty, and I'm so grateful to the organizations that are working to change those statute of limitations laws all around the country, because people have not been able to seek justice when time has run out. And for many survivors, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, we still haven't processed and felt comfortable in our own experience to be able to report. People often ask, well, why did you wait until you were 19 to report your father? Why didn't you say something? And it for somebody who has not been abused, it's a very complex question, because they say, why don't you just speak up? But there's so many reasons that people can't and won't speak up. And sometimes it takes us years to really fully grasp our own experience. I mean, 1/3 of child survivors have little to no memory of being abused by someone, sexually abused. Yeah. Up to 1/3 of child survivors. So some of us don't even recover our memories until 20s, 30s, 40s, even into 60s, 70s. And so because you have these statute of limitations that allow, perpetrators to walk away with no repercussions, it's just a travesty of justice. But I think it's important for people to realize that, reporting a sexual offense, that something has happened to you, can be a really daunting process. The criminal justice system is not set up well. Has improved, but particularly for people of color, low-income people, English as a second language, immigrants, the system does not respond well to reports. And oftentimes children and other family members can be caught in crosshairs and really not receive the support that they need and that they deserve. Yeah. And that there has been a lot of efforts to educate the criminal justice system, to educate them on what children need to get through the reporting and justice process, and also to be more sensitive to the needs of kids, because we don't want to further re-traumatize children. That being said, I always tell people, report, 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 because we have Harvey Weinstein's and we have Bill Cosby's, because there was very little or no record of their abuses. And it was only until there's been a long line of victims where we start to understand the scale. And sometimes these cases are reported and nothing is done, and it takes a long time to get action. But I always tell people, report to someone. If you can't go to the police, report to a friend, a family, get something down on paper so that there is a paper trail, because most of these predators, it's not just one victim. They have multiple victims. But then these cases get to court, and prosecutors will talk about how there's many, many victims out there, and defense attorneys will say, well, where are they? Where's the evidence? No, there haven't been any reports. So how do we know if this person is guilty, right? So by reporting and ensuring that people are aware of these crimes, it's really critical for getting justice.
Yeah, because the sad thing is, I've run into people and know some that it might have happened to them 30 years ago, 35 years ago. Me Too movement comes along, and now, it comes out. And the sad thing is, there's going to be no evidence. People ask, well, where's the evidence? How could there's no evidence of this? I mean, the evidence to me, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, would be those vivid memories that I notice that survivors have. I mean, they're the memories of some stuff. We've talked to one person that, they were remembering some things like license plate, just like license plates numbers, or some really, how many tiles were on the ceiling. You just can't remember this stuff. And, I don't know. It's upsetting to me. Right? The memories don't go. Obviously, that's the problem. The memories aren't going to go away.
Yeah, they're always there. I think when you look at sexual assault cases, the standard of evidence is often very different, particularly when you're talking about children being assaulted and children coming forward, or this crime coming to light, long after it happened. And so there's probably not going to be any physical evidence. And the physical evidence is oftentimes what people are looking for. because to them it proves that something went wrong, that something bad happened, right? But there are so many other ways of gathering and demonstrating evidence. I'll just talk about my case. There were 3 other people who were also sexually abused by my father. Now, when I reported him, there was an investigation done, and all 4 of us were interviewed separately and corroborated key details. There was no physical evidence. There was nothing other than what each one of us was saying, but a pattern of abuse. And the similarities between our 4 cases were just so obvious. There was no way that he was not going to be held accountable and convicted. And so there are other ways of going about demonstrating proof, but often it involves multiple people sharing their stories. And that's where sometimes it can become dicey, because it's a difficult thing going, potentially in front of a judge and a jury in a courtroom and talking about what someone might have done to you 30 years ago. And you might even have foggy memories, and you might not, you've been dealing with this issue for 30 years. You might not want to even relive it. And so many people are very hesitant to come forward. And so that makes it more difficult to prosecute these crimes. And I should mention that I am not, I'm not an attorney. I don't have a background in the criminal justice system, but from what I have heard from so many conversations with survivors, that it has been a challenge for them, but that reporting, bringing their case to light, bringing their experiences to light can be a very empowering experience. Because finally, there's validation for what you've been through. Finally, people know the cat's out of the bag. That's the way I think about it. The cat is out of the bag when you tell. And telling can be a difficult process, but if you have support, and if you take care of yourself and address your own emotional needs, that it can be a really empowering experience for a survivor.
Well, Suzanne Isaza, thank you for spending so much time with me. I got to let you go. I know we started out thinking, it's going to be 15, 20 minutes. I went a lot farther. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't take up too much time. Oh,
no, I'm happy to talk to you. Happy to come back anytime. And,
yeah.
I got a lot to say. Many survivors have a lot to say. I want to thank you for all that you're doing. This is such a critical issue, and not enough attention is focused on it. So the heroes like you that are using your mic, using your work to get these stories to light, I really appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate you too. Thank you. I'll definitely be reaching out to you very soon.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Have a good day, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was Suzanne Isaza. She is the founder of incestaware.org, sandcommunity.org, which is sexual assault advocacy network.org. Please go to those. And I believe in SAN, it's a SAN community, you can become a member, which I filled out a form myself. So people like her are unbelievable, survivors of some of the worst and cruelest crimes. And there she is. And just like all of us, just like all the survivors that we talk to here on Citizens United and Gorillas Inc., the strongest people you could ever meet, and then the people that are coming forward because of how strong people like Suzanne are, and the rest of the survivors that we have around us every day and all over the place. So let me take a break, and after this we'll be back and discuss a little of what we heard.